Welcome to the fourth and final podcast for 2019, an episode where I'd like to focus on the year that's been for the Pawsey Capital Refresh and the year that we have ahead as well in 2020. So I have Mark Stickles, our Executive Director at the Pawsey Supercomputing Centre, and Stacy Tyson with me, the Project Manager for this refresh. Welcome.
Thanks, Debbie.
So looking back on the last year, it looks like we've achieved a lot. Stacy, you were appointed in the project manager role. We established some reference groups. The tape and high-speed storage was expanded. And in the last episode, we also learnt that Dell Technologies was the successful vendor for the Cloud Compute upgrade. We've also had the MWA and ASKAP RFQs that were released and developed respectively. And of course, the Pawsey Supercomputing System tender was released on AusTender as well. So that's a bit of a summary of the year that was. What was it from both of your perspectives?
Well, Dee, it really was a great year, and starting with Stacey's appointment in February and joining the team, we've really established a great project team, a strong effort, as you'd expect in the first phases of a project, to set up the governance frameworks and the stakeholder consultation processes and the communications and related sort of activities. And as we've moved through the year, we've successfully completed some early stage procurements, but finished the year on what I think is a very positive note with the release of the tender for the Pawsey Supercomputing System, the PSS as we call it in shorthand, and look forward to moving into a year of greater focus on implementation of some of the new systems, and that whole process of user engagement, planning for migration of systems will characterise the next phase for this project.
Yeah, look, I think it's been a really exciting first year. I've certainly learned a lot about how Pawsey operates, and I've certainly learned a lot about supercomputing since I started from zero. There's been a huge team of people that made this year as successful as it's been. You touched on the reference groups that have been formed, and they've got a membership from both inside Pawsey and our user base, and they've given us a lot of their time and their input to help us procure the best system we can for the Pawsey users. And then within Pawsey, there's been a number of people who've provided their time and expertise to get us as far as we have, and they've done a fantastic job. I think we're coming to the end of one phase. We're coming to the end of that requirements phase. There is a little bit left to do, but we're predominantly done, and we're really shifting our focus into implementation, into change management, into looking at training requirements and things like that. So it's interesting that's come at the end of a calendar year, because it feels like we're sort of closing down one section of the project and kicking off the next section.
It sounds like it's been a busy year. It definitely has been. With these reference groups and the stakeholders that we've been engaging, is that going to change in the new year? Or
we'll continue to meet with the reference groups. It might not be as frequent because we haven't got as many sets of requirements to put through. But one key reference group that has just recently been formed is the Change Management Reference Group, and I should imagine that we'll be meeting with them more often as we start to plan our implementation process with the users.
Okay, so the year ahead, I think it kind of looks like we'll be shifting from tender and RFQ documentation to infrastructure delivery and user implementation with these reference groups and the change management group as well. So what is that year going to look like?
I might just say it's years. This is a sort of a 4-year project, and we've really we're moving into its middle phase, I think, is probably the way to put it. And there will be, I think we've described it before, a staged implementation or a phasing of the major system replacement over the next later into next year and into 2021. So I think, as Stacy mentioned, we've finished a calendar year, and it feels a very positive point on which to look forward. But we will be delivering systems in the first half of next year. I think the Cloud Compute upgrade and the MWA cluster will be in the first half of next year, and that there will be sort of preparing us, if you like, for what we'll learn through that process will prepare us for the major system upgrade, which will really be driven in 2021.
Yeah, I think there's not a lot to add. I mean, the cloud compute upgrade, we're already receiving materials at the centre, and we have been throughout December, and installation has commenced, which is really good news, which means we are on track for a Q2 a completion of that work. And with the MWA cluster, that's also progressing really well, and we're expecting award in January, which will also set us up for a Q2 2020 delivery of that system. So that's all very exciting, particularly when you realise that it's running in parallel with the main supercomputer procurement and all the evaluation work that will be happening with that. So another busy year.
It'd be great to check out, for those listening to the podcast, check out the website. So in recent weeks we've put more information on our project website, but I know that the team is working on some time lapse to see the sort of installation in action, and really interesting to see what's happening out in the white space. And
just touching on that, with this webpage that we have up, you can access it to get monthly updates on the Capital Refresh. We've got some cool infographics on there that give a stage by stage update on where we are in the refresh as well. But with those updates, do either of you have any highlights from the last year that really stood out?
I think the general feeling of relief mixed with excitement when we hit the button and released the main supercomputer tender on AusTender. That was a good day.
There's been a lot of highlights. It's been a really busy year, and at times we've very focused on the governance and accountability, because there's such a high level of scrutiny on this national project. $70 million worth of investment from the Australian government, plus the Pawsey partner support for our centre is significant, and there's an awful lot of attention, and perhaps at times we haven't stopped ourselves to say, well, we've actually achieved some really positive things this year. So getting out to market, and we are currently out of market in November was a significant highlight. But I've been really pleased with the way we've worked incredibly well with CSIRO procurement, and so a shout out to Matt and the team there, and the way all of the various reference groups and people across Pawsey sort of stepped up and supported what's an incredibly complex process of needs identification and specifications and so on, while still delivering the normal services of Pawsey. We tend to forget this is a podcast focusing on a project, but we've still delivered oversubscribed services through Magnus this year. We provide dedicated support to the MWA and ASKAP projects. And the fact that our team at Pawsey has been able to continue to do that while still committing so much to our future through the Capital Refresh is something I'm really, really proud of and pleased to be a part of.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mark and Stacy, for joining me today and wrapping up this year's podcast series. Of course, I'll be back next year with new episodes on the Pawsey Capital Refresh as well. Thank you all for listening. I hope you have a wonderful break and happy and safe New Year as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Aditi.
Thank you.